Hello and welcome to the Friday wrap up here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is March 14th, 2025, and we're looking at Bitcoin here on the daily, and we will be checking in on Ethereum and Solana today. I've gotten a lot of requests to take a look at them, so we will take a look at them very quickly. And I'll just give you like my high level overview, not quite as in depth as I'm going to be looking at Bitcoin here. As where Bitcoin goes, the rest will follow in US dollar terms at least. And we'll see, maybe we'll take a look at Bitcoin dominance and see if there's any kind of potential there, as it is in a bit of a wider range, but making closing higher highs on Bitcoin dominance. I was hoping that we might see a little bit of a cool down for you in alts over there, but it seems as though it was hopium for right now. But we'll see if that does have any potential to maybe provide some relief on the Bitcoin pair side of things. So Bitcoin, zooming in here on this downtrend on the daily here, we can see that where we were on Wednesday, we set the low coming in from Tuesday into Wednesday. I had mentioned pretty much what happened. And that was the possibility for a lower high or a lower swing high. We got a lower swing high with a higher swing low thus far. So from the Wednesday high, we actually didn't get a closing high. So we did get a bit of a swing higher high on the Friday candle relative to the Thursday candle that did head down. But with no close below 80,572 here, we didn't close the high. But we did put in a lower swing high to a higher swing low as it stands right now, another swing higher. So the criteria here is still going to be, a positive would be breaking and closing above 84,442 to break the swing high here on a close. We see that the Friday candle did close slightly under there while making that higher high, but then the additional criteria is seeing continuation above this 85,318, getting above that basis in the deeper $85,000 region, coming in just shy of 85,800, and then starting to work its way back up to take out 92.8 to 93K. That's still going to be the criteria on a close. And that's all while preventing continuation to the downside. That's what the bulls want to see, is holding the most recent lows at around that 76,555 to prevent a fall to the mid $70,000 region and possibly lower, to go in for a retest of that big accumulation last year, at least on the high side, between $68,000 and 73,835, which was the high of that prior consolidation down below. So essentially, the 68, I think is going to be the closing weeklies are somewhere around $68,000. I have to go double check. I think it's somewhere around this high. In this high, what did this high get to? This was the 66,550. So yeah, when looking at the weekly, this is kind of what is being staved off at the moment from the weekly perspective, with the loss of the lower first, with last week's close spike down to the lower second standard deviation in the midst of Bollinger Band compression, until we see closes below the weekly lower second, which is at that 76,400 or so on the lower term timeframes relative to the weekly. And of course, this is going to update pretty shortly here on Sunday. So that is kind of what's preventing the fall to test 68 to that 73,835 right now. So if bulls want to dig themselves out of this downtrend, they got to start working on moving back into reclaim the lows up here at that 89, essentially, to some of the closes just shy of 92.5 to that lower high just shy of $93,000. That would be a positive. And then start building some reversal structure. So break the downtrend on a close. So because this was the last closing lower high, yes, we have a swing lower high here. That's a positive closing above it if we do see closes above it. But for continuation to test further up, we need to see closes above the Friday high and then start building up to try and break the downtrending closing high with this swing higher high break at 92,817, and then build higher low equal low structure relative to this most recent low. Warning signs are going to be below, $80 to $82,000, heading towards this $78,000 region. If we start to get any moves towards that and below it, that would also put price below the lower second standard deviation, likely testing, the mid, this low at 76,555 to that $75,000 initially. And then we kind of see where things head from there. I am curious if we pull a fib, there's two different ways to pull a fib. Like if we're looking for retracements, we're looking for retracements in this case, back to the upside this way. I'm just going to pull it from the extension side of things, but I did want to call out kind of where this kind of move is headed in terms of, 72,100. So right around that top side of the structures over here, testing the highs of that prior range to the 1272 at 69.5. And then we have the 1414. And interestingly enough, this is that daily high as Bitcoin is building off of the low side of this range. We had that big spike down to $49,000. It tried for a trend reversal with the lower high, higher low, higher high structure, but it didn't get continuation, crashed back down to that 53.5 on a close, spiked down to that, I think it was like 52.5, and then started an actual uptrend, a little bit of a correction, fake out reversal setup for the bears there, and then ripped it back to the upside and then just went on to March. But you'll see that 1414 and then the 1618 there at $61,000. But if we look to the upside here, I want you to kind of take note of where the 50% of this move is. It's right there at around 91.5, which is essentially the bottom side of the range and a nice common area of now overhead resistance between essentially $89,000 and $92,000. And above there, then we have the 95.5, almost $96,000 where Bitcoin was sitting on right here before heading down. So just be aware of retracements back to these areas, even if it does get back in the range up here that result in lower highs. But we need to see an uptrend develop from here, and then we can gauge trend reversal setups and continuation of trend to the upside. And we could take a look real quick here at the local support and resistance, kind of where Bitcoin is trapping. You see that Bitcoin has spiked into that $85,000 again. And this was the, before breaking out of that prior longer term range that Bitcoin was in last year. In November, when we got the break, just before the breakout there on the 4th into the 5th, which was election day here in the US, we had the 6th then bust out of the range and get that really big expansion of volatility. The first red candle during that expansion had a low at $85,000. And you kind of see how it was lost, rejected, tried to sit on it, wick through it, tried to sit on it again, reject it. Now what are we doing? We're testing this as an inflection point in the lower term timeframes. Relative to the daily. So back above there, we start to look to 88.7, essentially $89,000, the weekly higher low swing, or the most recent higher low swing that we had, to around $92,000 of this red zone. Start getting above there. We want to see the 93.5, which was the weekly closing higher low structure closed above. Then we can start looking for a test into that $95.5 to $96,000 that I just showed you from the fib pull down here. That's going to be pretty important. So again, relative to that fib, if we want to really just make our screen absolutely a mess here, we could pull that fib again just so I can show you on the retracements back up. We're looking at the 50% fib right here just below the zone here, this red zone that I have, this $92,000, which by the way was a closing higher low structure. The bottom side was a wick higher low, so it's basically wick higher low to closing higher low, and then all the retests in between that 88.7 and right around $92,000. Now we have a confluent fib. Above there we got the weekly resistance, and then of course a 382. Which is just an inverted 618, 618, 382, or just your golden pocket zones. And that is right around the bottom side of this accumulation before the move down. Obviously, that would be a major area to pay attention to if we do see Bitcoin trading and closing the above the weekly area at 93.5, which is where the upper second standard deviation currently is on the daily. So when looking at the weekly, what do we need to see? Obviously, this is lower lows on the weekly, with higher low, relative to this higher low structure that was occurring. We have a higher high, lower high close, lower lows, lower low close. So we're in a bit of a accumulation period that I think, we need to see further compression of the bands. Let's go ahead and get rid of the local support and resistance zones, and then we'll go take a look at a few other things here real quick. But, we have this compression still ongoing on the weekly. This might start to flatten out this weekend. We'll see. Price volatility has picked up within the context of this band compression, but, we look at price moving into, a compression as price is testing the upper second or lower second standard deviation during a compression. They initially act as lower term time frame reversal areas that could build into higher term time frame reversal areas. Like this could build into a weekly higher term time frame reversal. As it stands right now, we need to see where this candle closes this weekend, because then it would be next week likely close above the high of this candle. Wherever this candle closes would set a low. Of course, it would be a lower low swing, lower low close. And then where do we break back to the upside into, where this becomes a deviation? It'd be on closes above 109,360 in this case. And really you'd start to see that get rolling above the upper first, where the lower high close open is at 102.5, or just slightly above 102.5 at 102,563. And then we probably see things chop around until we get an actual weekly close over close expansion above the upper second, or weekly close over close expansion down into support. And of course, we can gauge during the day what that looks like in terms of downside expansion into that area relative to the weekly, and same for the upside here, where the upper second standard deviation would put Bitcoin on new highs. And I do want to kind of talk about this for a moment. So let's say this is the low. Just hypothetically, this is the low. Bitcoin spikes back up. It makes a new all-time high and spikes the upper second standard deviation at 110 or slightly above. Maybe it wicks up to the upper third and hits 120. Which, by the way, I believe if you were going to pull this the other way, and you were going to pull this move the other way, yeah, this is going to line up right around a 1272 extension up here. I do see that coming down to like 115, 116, where this 1.168 is right here, but that's only if we see, I'd like to see Bitcoin closing above the lower first. So that would be your first thing. And that's currently just around $85,000. So weekly close above there reclaims that daily level that I pointed out just a little while ago, that red line at $85,000 from the daily first bear candle low of the expansion into the range up there. Reclaim that. That's also the weekly lower first, where we're getting that rejection and resistance from a volatility standpoint as well. And even if it spiked all the way up, we still need to see concerted close over close. We need to see a close above the upper second standard deviation, kick off volatility expansion in earnest to the upside, and then see close over close continuation. That'd be like the next leg to the upside. To the downside, I really see any kind of closes below the lower second just coming in to test the top side of this range, maybe a little bit deeper, but I wouldn't, even if it got close over close expansion into support. And that would be like, I think, present a lot of opportunity, but would likely result in a long form reaccumulation. If this is going to turn into a deviation here of this range up here, it needs to get back in range, reaccumulate, compress, and then blast off to the upside. Likely for, what many are going to call the final leg. We'll address this maybe on Monday or at the end of the quarter. I'll talk a little bit more about where I think we are longer term in terms of, potential highs. We can start, we'll have more information at the end of this month, right? We'll have, of course, the monthly close, but also the quarterly close. And then we can start looking at Q2 into the 6 month and start gauging kind of where things are. But let's go ahead and move on to Bitcoin dominance real quick just to check where it is. Ouch, ouch, that hurts. Look at that. Bitcoin dominance back on the rise, new higher highs. Likely coming in on a close here, or did come in on a close on the daily, I believe. Yes. And realistically, I still think we might be capped around that 64.3 or 64.5%. And then I think things come down. You can try some technicals on this. There's a lot of bearish divergence and it's losing relative strength and all that good stuff. And that is a vector of alts kind of holding right at their some of their primary supports. So could this start to turn, provide some relief for alts? Sure. Likely what that means is Bitcoin is heading further up. Alts are following in their Bitcoin dollar pairs and their dollar pairs, and then trying to make that up on the Bitcoin pair side of things. At least from here as in the current setup. That'll likely change over time though. Let's look at Ethereum. On the daily from a weekly standpoint, there's a big weekly zone between 1369, nice, and 1789 or 1790, right around $1,800. We saw a nice dip in there on the daily. Ethereum is not threatening to put in a low just yet. If it starts to close above 1962, then we can start entertaining maybe a trip back up to 2100 to 2300 at this red zone. Why is this a red zone? This is a red zone because this was a weekly breakdown. And we saw this area close below on the weekly. This was a nice base of support that was then lost to come down to the next big weekly area of support, at least on the top side. This is a big move down, lower second standard deviation to prevent closes below. We need to see close above 1935. Again, I want to see 1962 to set a daily low. And to even, to even break the downtrend, Ethereum has to close above 2320 from here. So, if it can't do that, it's likely going to put in a lower high. Bulls want to see the lows hold then to prevent a fall to 1677 or 1700, and then possibly 1500 or so by that lower third. Then it's gonna, if it doesn't prevent continuation, it's got work to do to get above 2320. This is a big area it just lost. So I'd be very bullish on it testing that. If we start seeing it like a daily close above 2100, if it hasn't already tested 2300, I'd look for it to try. Otherwise, I would be on the lookout for possible lower highs a little bit closer to price action. Maybe even like what Bitcoin just did, like a daily swing lower high to kind of swing higher low and then try to break that to really start building structure towards a closing lower high break. But gotta hold those lows. ETH bros, you really got to hold those lows or things are not going to be kind to the downside. But this is, if you believe in these assets longer term, this is where you're interested in accumulating in these key areas, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at Solana. Solana also, we have some mid-zone stuff going on here. Solana is in no man's land between some major weeklies. We had a weekly inside of a weekly here. Bigger zone is between it's going to be around 125 to around 78. You can call it 80 to $125. Spiked a weekly interim area around that 118, dipping down to the 112. Is $100 in the cards? Yes, this is a mid-zone support area that I'd be looking for if it does head back down. Same thing with now what we do have is a low set and a swing higher low break in a higher low close for Ethereum. For Solana. So what you want to see on Solana's closes back above 152, start testing 169. Nice. Love the memes. And then obviously big one to get over is not just the 169, but go take out that daily at 180 to start working its way back towards $200. Otherwise, any test back down and closes specifically below 118, 120 region, probably looking at, $100 is a viable target in here. So just understand that, like that is a viable target. And what I suggest is that if you're in alts, you're watching what Bitcoin is doing, because if Bitcoin is going to head up, your altcoins will head up in Bitcoin dollar, or I'm sorry, in US dollar terms. And then it's possible that we start to see Bitcoin dominance drop, and maybe they can start outperforming again on their Bitcoin pair, or making up ground in this case, as dominance has been quite strong for a while here. And when you have a top performer like Ethereum that was moving very, very quickly versus its Bitcoin pair for so long, which I'm not showing right now, but just going to talk about, is like you got to see that kind of reaccumulation in that pair. So you need to see that US dollar pair really start to gain strength, and then have that turn into that, that outperformance on the Bitcoin pair side of things. Same for Ethereum. Otherwise, this looks like it's likely going to be in for a long form reaccumulation structure here on the weekly. That is healthy. I think that Ethereum has to do that as well, unless it just pops right back up. Solana is holding a base here. Much like Ethereum, you don't want to see it closing below the base of support here. You can even earmark that 110 right there. Otherwise, it's swinging down to this weekly swing higher low, closing higher low structure at $100, and that will open the door for the $80 targets. So it's kind of in between support and resistance, and some key areas on the weeklies here between that 125. Can it dip below safely on the daily? Yep. Just don't want to see closes, inconsistent closes below 120. And then, for wider range, longer term, I'm not saying that it's going to get there, watch that 169 to the upside. That's even where the lower first is on the daily. Probably going to be more towards the 150 range, though, as time goes on here, depending on how fast this moves. Same goes for Ethereum. 114 is the pivot on the daily, well above there, so upward pressure. Weekly is going to be 172, so it's got it's downward pressure right around that lower second. But what you're hoping for is a reversal off that lower second, pop up to the lower first by that 169, 170. Ethereum 2366, very close to the area that needs to break on the daily for the weekly to turn. Daily is going to be turned up above 1800. So, and then we're looking at Bitcoin. Bitcoin's crossing back up at 78,170 on the daily. Bullish divergence of both. We saw this. We wanted to see the low set. We got the low set. We have the bullish divergence here, and then we for RSI, and then we have momentum bullish divergence. So closes above 78,175 in this case. We'll do that weekly. We've got a ways to go. That's still $100,000. So I'll be back on Monday to regale you with stories of price and what I think about it. And I hope you join me again on Monday to listen in, and as we evaluate where things kind of close over the weekend and what to look forward to next week. I want to wish you all a wonderful weekend, a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. With all of that being said, Landy out. Take care.